Many people think that your assets automatically go to your kids or other loved ones upon your death. Or sometimes people just don't want to think about what happens when they die. Or sometimes they're so focused on their life and they're convinced they're going to live for, till they're 90 or 100. And then their life is tragically cut short. So there's several situations I want to bring up that really illustrate why it's so important to set up an estate plan. What does that even mean? And you'll also find out a little bit more about these celebrities who unfortunately didn't set things up in time. Hopefully you'll find this interesting. So in each state, there's a set of default rules that say if you die and you haven't spelled out your estate plan, you don't have a revocable trust, then this law automatically kicks in. In California, it's called the Probate Code. And if you have more than a certain amount, and the amount keeps going up a little bit each year, but it's right now it's $184,000. If you have more than that amount and you haven't said where you want it to go and it's just stuck in your name, it doesn't have beneficiary designations, it's not in a revocable trust, it's just in your name, and then you die, how do we know where it goes? So that asset would need to go through the probate court system. So why would you want to avoid probate in the first place? All right, well, first of all, it's super expensive. All right, so the attorney and the executor, the person managing the process, each of them get paid via statutory amounts. All right, so for example, a $1 million estate in California costs somewhere around $23,000 to administer for the attorney and for the executor. And you might think that's crazy, that's too much. Well, it's a lot of work. The process is really arduous. There's a lot of paperwork and it can take a really long time. I know in Santa Clara County, which is one of the counties where I practice at right now, hearing dates are being held 4 months after you try to set the hearing. So you can imagine everything is pushed out and there's several hearings that have to take place. So I try to help my clients avoid probate at all costs. But here are a few celebrities who did not avoid probate and everything is public. Now that's another reason to avoid probate is because the whole process is available to the public. Now this makes it kind of interesting for us. And I think the first person who's passed away most recently, unfortunately, was Prince. An amazing, amazing musician, and he was really tight with his music, really detail-oriented and meticulous, but not with his estate plan. He never drafted a revocable trust, he didn't draft a will, and of course he's from Minnesota, so the Minnesota court stepped in. So as you may know, he died in August of 2016. He had 6 half-siblings. So all of Prince's half-siblings had to work together to figure out how to divide up the different types of assets. Because just like us, Prince didn't just have a whole lot of cash in the bank where you say, okay, 6 goes to each of them. It doesn't work that way. So they had to make agreements that had to be approved by the court system. It was really a pain, and it's just now wrapping up. This is something we want to avoid. So if you put in your revocable trust, which avoids probate, you say, I want my assets to go this way to these people, then you've already made the decision. And nobody's trying to finagle with each other. What type of asset do they get? The trustee makes that decision. And of course, this process has taken 6 years. It's so arduous. If anybody's gone through the court system, you'll understand why me, even as an attorney, why I hate going to court. It's just awful. So avoid this whenever you can. So our next example is Kurt Cobain of Nirvana, right? He died in 1994 and he left behind his wife, Courtney Love, and also a daughter. Now the tragic thing, there's many tragic things about what happened, but apparently he had gone to an attorney to start drafting up a will and a trust, and it never got signed. So he didn't get to choose who he wanted as successor trustee, and instead, Courtney stepped up. Now it turns out Courtney Love, apparently they were in the process of a divorce. I don't want to cast aspersions, but that's what I've read. And so he wouldn't have wanted her to manage the estate, I'm sure, right? But she did, and she made a lot of mistakes, and there was a lot of controversy. And so he could have avoided that if he had just named the person that he wanted, who he trusted, as a successor trustee. The other thing that happened is when his daughter turned 18, she received 1/3 of all the assets outright. And in this case, it was a huge amount. Apparently his estate now is valued at over $450 million. I don't know what it was initially, but she inherited a lot of money, his daughter, outright at age 18, which I think most of us could agree with is way too young for somebody to manage things. If he had set up a revocable trust, he could have specified how that money would be managed for her benefit, but somebody else could make all the decisions and not blow through the money or even harm themselves with the money. There were a lot of lawsuits between Courtney Love and the other members of the band. We just want to avoid fights in general, and setting up a revocable trust is really the best way to do that. Now, you may not have an estate of $450 million, right? So you might be thinking, well, this doesn't really apply to me. But all these issues that they ran into can apply to you. You might have a family that's fairly dysfunctional, that can't agree on things, that the person who'd step up to manage things probably wouldn't be your choice, right? That you have young children who you don't want to receive the assets outright at age 18. All of these issues come up with us regular people as well. And we need to address these things just like we hope Kurt would have done so. And the list continues. Next we have Bob Marley. He died in 1981 and he left behind his wife and 11 children. His estate was worth about $30 million and it was distributed under Jamaican law. So his wife Rita stepped up to be the administrator, but apparently she received bad advice from her accountant and her attorney, and she forged some documents and ultimately got into a lot of trouble with this. And this made things really stretch on. You don't want your family members to get in trouble with anything just for trying to carry out your wishes. So this is something you would really want to avoid. They also had the issue of how are they going to divide up all the assets between all of these different people. If you have a larger family, you will definitely want to set up a revocable trust. So please avoid those mistakes that Bob Marley had made by not doing his planning. Okay, so the last one we have is Sonny Bono. He's famous in many ways, right? But unfortunately, he died pretty young in a skiing accident. And he left behind his wife, Mary, and his 3 kids. Now, his estate was more modest, probably more like many of ours, or more than many of ours, right? But he had about $2 million. So Mary, his wife, became the executor, but then somebody else came forward and petitioned the court and said that they were his Sonny's love child. So this caused quite a ruckus, and boy, it took a long time to sort it out. Eventually, that man was denied an inheritance, but you can just imagine, you would not want your surviving spouse having to deal with all these people, or even one person coming forward and saying that they're a member of your family, right? So when you do a trust, you specify who is your family and who is not. You can disinherit anybody else and just make sure that it's very clear where you want things to go and who you want to manage them. So I think deciding to do an estate plan is the most loving thing you can do for your family. You're really setting things up so that your family can continue to get along after you're gone, and you know that your money is going to go to the right places and much quicker and less expensive than the probate court system. So now be sure to watch this video over here where I talk about estate planning terms and what are the different words that you should know as you're preparing your estate plan. I'll see you over there.